You're listening to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. Here, I share stories from real people navigating the adventure that I call adulting. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do this. Hello, friends. In this episode, I'm going to introduce you to Megan Tobler. And we talk about a time when she was fired from a job. So I get to talk to people these days quite often about career changes, and I love it. One of the things that is fun about this for me is that when I was a kid growing up, an adult in training, I actually had the perception that being fired or changing jobs was unusual. This is kind of hilarious looking back because my father was a freelancer. He was changing jobs almost every day. But anyway, that was my concept of the world. I'm not sure that it's quite true today. There is a narrative that it used to be more true, that people would have a job and keep it for a longer time. I don't even actually know if that's quite true because I wasn't actually alive then or working. There is a unique spin to Megan's story because when she was going through this career change, she was pregnant. And by the way, I think that's kind of sort of supposed to be hard to do or against the rules. So we talk about that and we go through what happened. So we talk about what happened, what she decided to do, how she felt in this transition, and how it went. Before we jump in here, I do just want to add that one of my personal goals with this project was and is to cross the age demographic silos. Those words may not make a whole lot of sense together for you guys that are listening, but what I mean is that today in 2025, people are grouped into silos, and which means that we as individuals are grouped together in fairly rigid groups that align with what we're doing. So, for example, women with young children are more likely to hang out and socialize and do networking with other women of the same demographic. And that's great. But I do think that there's huge value in crossing these lines and having people in different age groups have conversations that are not necessarily structured, whereas, like, hey, the older person knows more than the younger person does. Both people can learn and benefit from the conversation, sharing things in different ways. And this, you guys, this conversation is an example of that. So I think you're going to love it. Let's do it. Megan Tobler, welcome to the Art of Imperfect Adulting. Are you ready for a fun chat?
I am ready, Amy. Let's do this.
Let's do it. All right. I start all of my interviews asking people where they are. What part of the world are you in?
I'm in sunny Southern California, so all the way across the country from you, from what I understand.
That's right. I'm in Miami, but it is not sunny here at all. We have a rain system parked over Miami for a couple of days. We're recording this at the beginning of June. We hit Hurricane Susan June 1st and it started raining. It rained so hard here yesterday that my local post office flooded, and I went to mail something this morning and they were like, sorry, closed.
Oh no, I know my husband lived in Florida for a few years and he was just talking about how flat it was. So everything, when you get the rain, there's nowhere for it to go. So you're just trudging through those waters, right?
Exactly. I mean, usually stores and things don't flood because they build for that. So this is pretty unusual, but it does happen. We can get tropical rain. You can get 4 or 5 inches of rain within a couple of hours, which is a huge amount. And so sometimes, but this is unusual. This post office has been there since like the 1950s, and people were like, "We don't know what happened." So this is unusual. It just is what it is. But we're not here to talk about the weather. Okay, so in a second, we're going to start the official interview. I just want to ask one more warm up question. There is a saying that laughter is the best medicine. So, my question for you is, can you share with us something that you can count on to make you smile or laugh?
So as we're recording this, I have an almost 21-month-old little boy. So he is like the light of my life. Speaking of just like a ray of sunshine, like that is it. So every single day, like he completely brings a smile to my face. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth or out of his body. You never know. So let's just say that he's a for sure way to get a smile on my face.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So that is an excellent segue into the topic of the day, which is you shared with me on the intake form that you were fired when you were pregnant, which actually sounds very unpleasant to me. And I have questions about that. But we're also going to talk about what happened next. Does that sound like something you're ready to talk about?
I'm ready.
My first question: how long had you worked for the company?
Mm, we were going on over, gosh, it was probably over 2 years at that point. I had just celebrated my 2-year anniversary. They were talking about moving me into a different department because I was the top salesperson, but they really needed help in the customer success organization. So there were talks of me moving there, and then all of a sudden things halted. And I never really understood why. But then I realized that, oh, I announced my pregnancy.
All right.
And then they completely laid off the entire sales organization. So instead of moving me into the customer success organization, I was part of a mass layoff with every single sales employee, part of the company, which I never heard of before.
Okay, so that answers a couple of the questions that I had. Do you know how many employees roughly there were in the company when you were working there?
There were about 65 employees, so we were a startup, and 20 people at minimum were let go in one day as part of the sales organization. So they completely redid their platform and their market, and they no longer needed a sales engine.
So this was what we call a reduction in force. This
Yes,
is, yeah.
completely.
So that was, so because when you said this, right, because, for anybody who's listening who is wondering why I would ask this, like, it's supposed to be that if you are pregnant, you are a protected employee. You're not supposed to be able to easily fire people who are pregnant from a team. That doesn't always happen. That's not really there all the time. And there are some exemptions for very, very small companies that cannot be expected to keep people on just forever and ever. But it did catch my attention, I will tell you. And one of the exceptions to that is if a company does what's called a reduction in force, and there are rules about it, and they're doing, I forget what the number is, a certain percentage of the employees, they can then lay everybody off.
Yes. So I was pregnant, my colleague was pregnant, and we had two people on paternity leave that they also let go during that time. So four out of the 20-ish people were all people that were either new parents or soon to be parents as well. So it was definitely not ideal, but I believe that things happen for you rather than to you. And in this case, I just had to look at this as the glass is half full rather than half empty and take it and run with this opportunity.
All right. So, what reason did they give you when they laid you off?
That they were making a change in their business. And so basically, the way that they had it is I was selling a B2B program, business to business. They were taking away the B2B side of the business and focusing solely on B2C, where they no longer needed a sales engine anymore. They had enough business coming in from a marketing standpoint where people were just signing up from the consumer, from the B2B space. So again, they were no longer in that B2B space and they were just completely making a pivot.
All right, very good. So we're going to talk in a second about what you did after this, but I want to ask you about this job in general. Was this your dream job? Like, had you studied for this? Is this what you saw yourself doing forever?
No. To flat out be blunt, no, absolutely not. When I first thought about what I wanted to be when I grew up, I never knew exactly what that was going to be, but I was always really involved with like people and like what made them tick and understanding their stories. And so naturally, I actually started in the entertainment industry. I got an internship. I worked at Nickelodeon for a while, and that was actually such a wonderful job. That was to date the most fun job, like from a traditional job standpoint that I've ever had. But I started to look at the women at the very top, and what I realized is that they didn't have a family. They were completely engrossed in their work, and it was like a beautiful life that they created for themselves, but it wasn't the life that I envisioned for myself. So I took a step back and really thought about what do I see for myself? So from there, I really took a look at, okay, what is it that I enjoy about this job? What is it that I'm good at? And I liked the people aspect of it. So I decided that I was going to go into sales. And I had a really great career in the corporate sales world. I was there for over 10 years, but similarly to my job in the entertainment or my experience in the entertainment industry, I didn't understand how I was going to have everything that I wanted. How can I have the thriving career while also being a present home and like there for my child or children when they need me? And I was working 24 hours a day basically for a 9 to 5 jobs because in sales it's commission based. That's where you make your income. I was working during vacations. I was commuting up to 3 hours to and from work every single day. And I just couldn't figure out how I was going to have it all. So to answer your question, no, that wasn't my dream job because it wasn't going to give me the life that I really envisioned for myself, which was having the the success that I was looking for in like the business standpoint, but also the success at home where I was able to be present and involved in my child's life.
I love that answer. So it wasn't your dream job, but you were doing something that you had sought out directly. What did you do for Nickelodeon? Was it like in a Nickelodeon hotel or were you in like production? What were you doing for them?
I was in production originally, and then I also worked in the corporate office for a little bit, which that was very eye-opening as well, that that wasn't what I was meant to do. But the production side, I absolutely loved. I started as an intern there, and I was a production assistant as well as a production coordinator, working on some of like, I was working on iCarly and Sam and Cat and Victorious back in the day. So this is probably, gosh, 15 plus years ago at this point.
Definitely. One of my kids
Yes.
was, we were in iCarly house for a very long time. One of my
Okay.
kids was big into iCarly. So those characters are members of my family.
Well, I will tell you that all the individuals are wonderful people as well. So,
That is very cool. So, but you love doing sales, and that part of it you were into. I give you props for figuring out that this was not your dream job while you were still doing it because I didn't figure out that it fit into the family thing until it like I was already familying, and I was like, oh wow, my available time does not actually match the time that somebody is willing to pay me for. I was like, I tell people, I'm like, when I realized that there was no job that was available between preschool drop off and preschool pickup, I was very surprised.
well, and I also add to the mix that my husband's still in the entertainment industry and he works very demanding hours. And I knew that we both couldn't have that type of job in order, and like, if one of us needed to go pick up, if there was a sick kid, like
Yeah.
one of us has to do it. And he was higher up in his career. So it was one of those things where it didn't make sense for me. And I just knew there had to be a way that I could still have it all. And
Yeah.
only I could decide what having that all meant for myself.
That's a really, really good point about the whole have it all because the all that people talk about is very different from house to house. And the formula that goes in families really does matter because it's not just entertainment. Anybody who has a partner who is in any sort of client facing work where you have to jump when the client calls, you got to have that conversation. And it doesn't always mean that one of the people chooses to be the primary caregiver. Sometimes it means that you hire a crap ton of help to be there. But when school gets out, or if a kid gets the flu, it's shocking. You guys may not remember, but they don't wait for you. They're like, come and get the kid. We'll see you in 15 minutes. And if you're like, sorry, I'm not available, they're like, that is not an option, actually.
See, luckily, my son is, I haven't had to put him in daycare yet, so I
Yeah.
haven't personally experienced this quite yet, but a lot of my friends and family members have. So I've heard the horror stories where the kids are constantly sick and people are being threatened to be like fired from their jobs because they're thinking that the people are choosing their family life over their job. Well, hello. Isn't that what the number one priority is? Is like my family is like, I got to take care of my kids when duty calls, duty calls. But the working world just really hasn't been set up to allow parents to thrive in both options. I feel
Yeah.
like there's still some room for improvement.
Oh, yeah. Well, and some of it is not even like ideological or stuff like that. If you're running an office that you have a call center that's open between hours X, Y, and Z, your job is to staff it, right? And to keep it up for the clients. And I used to have for a while, I had a big team of people. I was very young, and the vacation request time was like cyclical on certain days. And it went through this year after year where the people who had kids would show up right on the very first day with their request that lined up with school. And I never even thought about it until I was in a different position. I was like, now I understand why they were there asking for that time off because when the office is open, when school is out, and little kids don't get to stay home by themselves. So, all these. So anyway, props to you for figuring out beforehand because I was surprised by those things. Apparently, I'm not as future thinking as maybe I think I am. All right, so this happened. How long ago was this? Your baby is 20 months old. How long ago did this happen?
About 3 years ago. So
3 years ago.
actually, no, 2.5 years ago. So I just announced my pregnancy to the company. So it was in early 2023. So 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay, so now I don't know about you. When I was pregnant, I was wildly emotional. It was a little bit bonkers. If you had to describe your emotions on the day that you took place in the mass layoff, what three words would you use to describe how you felt?
I felt sick. And the feeling where your just stomach drops and you feel like you're literally going to be sick. That's how I felt. I felt panic. But in another weird way, I felt relief.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. Very good. What did your support circle say when you told them?
So my husband had told me for a while that like the writing was on the wall and that I needed to find a new job ahead of time. He wasn't shocked when I told him that this happened. But it was one of those moments where, okay, well, we'll figure this out. Uh, I will say that, and my parents have always been really supportive from an emotional standpoint, and I always know that I have them to like lend an ear to, or they're gonna lend an ear to me as well. So my circle was very supportive. I will say that I had done a really good job at making sure that I was connected from a networking standpoint. So once that happened and word got out that I was available, I had 40 interviews in the span of 2 weeks. So it was insane where I was just back to back phone calls to see if like I was going to start a new job. And so it was very promising from a standpoint as like I wasn't going to be without a job. But what was happening is when I was having these conversations, it was conversation after conversation where I felt empty inside. I was speaking with these wonderful people and their companies were doing great things, but I wasn't feeling emotionally invested. And on top of that, the maternity benefits weren't there. It was one of those things where, okay, do I tell them I'm pregnant or do I keep it hidden and then get hired and then figure out like what do their benefits look like? And unfortunately, you were talking about like earlier, there's supposed to be protections in place, but there's really not. They
It's
don't
very
have to
strange.
exactly. They can find another way not to hire me if I tell them I'm pregnant. They'll find another loophole as to like why I'm not the best candidate. And that's what
Yeah.
was happening. And
People who are listening to this from outside the country are like, what are they talking about? Like, why? What?
oh, it's
Because
bonkers.
this is not even a conversation in a lot of places that people have because they have completely different mindset about it. But and when back, this is going back a long time because my kids are all adults now. But I will never forget. Like I was having conversations with HR as I was getting ready to go on leave, and the people in HR in the company I work for, they were all women, and so it was like a conversation in code because they were like saying things to me that they're representing the company and they're like, so, your long-term disability. And I was like, what are we talking about? And, they're laying it out because it is this whole subterfuge of, you're supposed to be protected, but here's how you actually protect yourself.
Exactly. Well, and I think that they actually did you a blessing by like even whispering it to you,
Yes,
like
many
subliminally.
people have told me that I was very, very lucky. And so I agree. And I hope that people don't have that experience now. In their, I mean, we hope that things will get better, but the reality is that everybody still says that the corporate space in America is still not a super friendly place for women. And some of that is the reality of business, and some of it is the American way we do things. But all right, so the question I was going to ask you next, which you sort of were talking about, and you said some things that are really, really good. It's fascinating that you did have this great network and people did this. Were you looking for a job? Was that your first plan?
Yes, initially. So I'll back it up a little bit. In October of 2022, I actually released my first podcast episode. So I was already having thoughts in my head that I knew that I wanted something different. I just didn't know exactly what that was. So, like you, I have my own podcast. It's called Self StartHER, and it's very similar to this in the aspect where I'm interviewing people about their stories. However, we're really focusing on entrepreneurship in my
Yeah.
podcast because I really wanted to understand from the women who came before me, how did you leave corporate? What do you do? And like, how do you do it? So that's really where this entire thing started with what I'm doing today is because I wanted more and I just again I didn't know what exactly that more was. So when I got laid off, I had already laid the foundation from this podcast and I think that is one of the reasons why I felt a little empty inside when I was having these conversations for these 40 interviews in those 2 weeks is because I knew deep down that I wasn't meant to go to one of these jobs. And I really think that if I had potentially taken one of those jobs, that I wouldn't be where I am today because it is easy to get sucked into the money and the benefits because it provides a level of kind of quote unquote like security and safety that I was comfortable with. Whereas if you jump into life as an entrepreneur, you really are providing yourself with that security and your safety. So in one way, it's actually more secure than someone that could drop you on the whim, like they did in corporate. However, you have to do more planning. Like it's every day is going to be a little bit different. So there's a lot of unknowns that go into entrepreneurship. So that's really kind of really where I was focused on is like when I had those conversations. I felt empty because I knew that there was something more for me. So that's when I realized that, okay, if I am feeling this way, I'm clearly feeling it for a reason. So I had a conversation with my husband. We went over the finances and we said, okay, if not now, then when? Go for it. So I was able to hop onto his benefits, which actually saved us in the long run. So again, I felt like things happened for a reason. His benefits
Yeah.
were better than mine. And I just decided to go all in on my podcast. And really, that was the beginning of my entire business. I will say, though, that right after we decided to make this change, I told you my husband is in the entertainment industry. So in 2022
It's
or
the writer's strike.
2023, we went through the strike.
Yeah.
So he had a job but he wasn't allowed to work. So we both were thrust into a life of no income for months on end when also while we were expecting an infant. So it was a very crazy time. Like I said about those emotions, your stomach like drops into or your throat drops into your stomach. You feel like you're gonna get sick, but there's also this feeling of like hope, too. It's like things are going to work out. I just have to kind of keep putting my step in front of each other, like and doing my best every single day to make this happen.
So I promised the listeners that Megan did not actually write these questions that I have for this interview, even though she is like absolutely segueing right into the next thing I was doing. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the concept of safety, because you put on the intake form that you decided not to return to the safe route of having a job, and because it didn't feel safe anymore. And I hear that a lot from people, right? I do. I hear that a lot. So I want to talk a little bit more about reframing that idea of safety. So when you had the job and the benefits that felt secure, when you were laid off, that changed. Walk us through a little bit about actually making that change to seeing your empowerment as a secure path.
Well, I also want to say that this wasn't my first mass layoff. This was my second mass layoff in the span of 3 years. So my first one was in 2020. I was working for a food tech company where we were selling food to companies
Like
that
restaurants and things like,
employees.
okay.
It was like a food benefits program, and
Okay.
obviously no one's coming to the office, so there's no need for this. So again, I was a part of a mass layoff. The entire sales team is out. And so second one, 2023, same thing happens, mass layoff, cut the entire sales team. And it just shows you that even though that you're the top performer, that doesn't mean anything because the business is always going to look out for their needs and put their needs ahead of your own. And so I realized throughout this is that if the business is looking at it that way, then for my family's sake, I need to start looking at my needs over the needs of the business. Even though I am definitely always looking out for everyone else, I realized, especially during this pregnancy, is that I needed to start protecting my family. And the traditional, like, safe route that we thought was safe, like corporate, was turning out to be completely different than my parents' generations and their parents' generations. There was no safety, there was lots of turnover. The companies no longer viewed the employees like a long-term part, like piece of the family. It was just like who's going to help take me to the next level, and then you're disposable when you're no longer going to help them get there. So for me, the safety was betting on myself. I knew that I had the work ethic. I knew that I had the savings in place because I was making a really great salary, and my husband, the two combined, we had savings in place. Otherwise, we would not have been able to make it, I will tell you, for those months on end when we both were not working. But it was scary. I won't say that because every single month we're watching the savings go down as we're paying our bills. Life in California is really expensive. So honestly, I wouldn't have made this step if it wasn't for the savings, if it wasn't for like my husband's solid job, because when you're starting a business, there's a lot of risk that's involved. There's a lot of unknowns, big question marks.
Yep.
And today I still haven't replaced the amount of money I was making in corporate, but I don't think at this point I can confidently say that any amount of money would get me back to where I was in corporate because of like the amount of like satisfaction and fulfillment I feel today completely replaces, well, not all the way, but it definitely helps like when the money isn't where you were making like the multiple six figures that you were comfortable with before.
Yeah, and you talked about some other things too that are really interesting. So let me ask you this. If you were to say, and when we talk about risk and what your risk-taking personality is, are you naturally a risk taker or are you somebody who you would say is a little bit more conservative in terms of chances that you take?
It's interesting because we have a financial advisor. And so every single year, my husband and I have to sit down and we have to do our little risk assessment. And we always put like that we're in the middle.
Okay.
However, I would say that I'm a little less risk taking than my husband is.
Okay.
A little bit more likely to like go for it because it always has a way of working out. But for me, I think especially like as a woman and really wanting to make sure that I have like the security set in place from a financial perspective, I am a little bit less of a risk taker from that standpoint naturally. So this actually surprised a lot of people that I was going to just completely just go into entrepreneurship full time instead of going back into the corporate space and making sure that I had the comfy savings and all the good things there.
Yeah, because historically, many people grow up with an idea that, and a lot of this has to do with what life was like in the family you grew up in. And I don't know if you had any business owners or entrepreneurs or freelancers in your family, like your aunts, your uncles, your parents. But if you have the idea that the best, safest way or the only way to earn an income is to have a paycheck, then often that is partnered with the idea that business is risky, like starting a new venture is risky. And when you go into business, there are two types of stories that a lot of people tell. One is the romantic, everything works, take your idea, follow your passion, and you will be the next Jeff Bezos. And the other is 95% of businesses fail in a deficit, right? Those are the two stories that you hear, right? So sometimes it's like really interesting when people are like, no, I'm going to take the safe route, which is creating my own journey. And people are like, that doesn't work with my view of the world.
Well,
That's
and
not
I
how I see the world. Yeah.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been able to interview hundreds of women at this point, and everyone has different upbringings and different
Yeah.
backgrounds and different ways of looking at it. And I would say that if I had the choice to do this all over again and I wasn't laid off during pregnancy, then I would have start this as a true side hustle while I was also working in corporate. If I could have done things on my own terms, that was the plan, was to be
Yeah.
able to make
Okay.
sure that I had the cushion in place. I was building the side hustle to the point where I could financially justify making the leap. Life had other plans for me. That's not how it went. But again, I think I don't know if I truly ever would have made that leap if it wasn't for that nudge. And that's why I answer this is like, I don't know if I'm as risk taking as I'm let out to be because it was forced at me. I just saw an opportunity. I was listening to like the signs that were being presented around me. And again, it was timing. If not now, then when? So I just decided to go for it. And that's obviously not the most ideal time to start a business is when you're talking about like hormones are crazy during
Yeah.
pregnancy and like you're not feeling well and things like that. Energy levels are up and down. It's definitely not the most ideal time to do it, but I did it. And I did it also while having a newborn. And now he's almost 2 years old. And so I'm here to say that it's possible, but it's not always easy. It's just you have to have like that bigger passion and mission and sense of fulfillment driving you towards that bigger purpose because there are days where it's not easy.
Yeah, no, and you laid it out. It's clear that you are a person who is a planner because you mentioned that you had a benefit solution. And so you were planning these things out and you had some savings. Those are really big bonuses in being able to do that. Those are pragmatic, like life plans. There are people who they start businesses because their backs are against the wall. They don't have any other choice, and there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think I personally, this is just my opinion. Nobody should listen to it. Like, it's just my thought. I don't know that there's one right way that works. I think that often it is what depends and what are the choices in front of you, who you are, what are the choices that you have in front of you and what you decide to go with. And I think that's interesting because when you talk about people teaching other people how to create and invent, and build businesses. I think it's really interesting because I think sometimes people don't actually know what they do that works in some cases. And I don't mean that as a criticism. It's just that you're out there, you're doing all of the things, and you're like, well, something, one of these things worked.
Well, I think it's completely accurate. I think that most of us don't know our areas of genius just because it comes so naturally to us
Yeah,
that sometimes it takes an outsider saying, you're actually really good at this for you to understand, oh, maybe that is something that I can monetize because it just comes so naturally to me. It does what works for me might not be like what works for you
yeah,
and vice versa. So like maybe I'm a systematized person, but you're not, and you're really needing to know like how to do this. For me, it's second nature. It's just
right,
something that I do every single day, but not everyone does that. And that's something with all these interviews I've done for the podcast. I'm sure just like you, I've realized that there's so many different types of people out there and there's a business for everyone if you want that, because
right.
I truly believe that it's not for everyone. So
Right.
you have
There's
to
no
have that
rule
little
that you
voice
have to.
inside. Yes,
There's no
exactly.
rule that says that you have to do it. Absolutely. You can, there are jobs and there are businesses and yeah, no, 100%. Okay. So we've talked a lot about it. We've mentioned that you have a podcast. We've done all of these things. Tell us directly what you do today. Who are the people you help? Like, who do you, and how do you want people to connect with you after the show?
Absolutely. So the podcast has ultimately filtered into this wonderful community for moms building businesses while also juggling life at home. So I mentioned I have this little toddler running around, and it's not easy building a business while you have a little 20-month-old as your boss. So basically, I traded in a CEO for a 20-month-old at this point. So my complete schedule is dictated by his needs. And I really wanted to create a space for women who are in the same season of life that understood that what it was like to be able to have these ambitions and want something more outside of being a stay-at-home mom. Again, there's nothing wrong if that's something that you want, but coming from the corporate world, that's something that never left me. I still had that desire to like create and to like grow from a business standpoint. So these women are moms that are doing the same thing, and we're being able to provide them with research or networking opportunities, and we're bringing in guest experts to help them, give them the different resources that they need to be able to start and grow their business, but also to help them stay grounded and sane in like the chaos of motherhood,
Yeah.
because that's what I've noticed in a lot of communities. It's one or the other, but I really wanted to build a place where it really encapsulated the full woman and all of her needs because it's not as simple as either or, it's and it's just blended in this like beautiful, messy, chaotic way. And I really wanted these women to feel seen and supported.
That is really nice. You touched about something that is a conversation that has maybe been going on for the last, I don't know, 50, 60 years, like as long as women have been working. Within the community of women, there's like a divide sometimes and about like, are you working? Are you staying at home? Are you doing these things? And sometimes these groups of women pit against each other, unfortunately. And it's one of those things that I hope will change over generations. You're in a different generation of moms than I am. So if it's still happening, that means it hasn't quite shifted yet. A crazy thing happened when I had young kids, which is that I was running a business. I was working my own hours and setting my own hours. So most people at school did not realize I had a business. They thought I was a stay-at-home mom when I wasn't. And there were several moments people were like, well, can you do this? And I was like, what is it that you think I do? Like, let's just talk about this. Like, no. Right? But it was like both sides of the coin are out there. But it is unfortunate that you had to couch that statement with that, like that it's okay, right? Because the ultimate empowerment statement is as long as you're making the decision, you get to make it. If you want to raise your family in a yurt in Iceland, go for, I don't even know if there are yurts in islands. I don't even know if that sentence makes sense. And you're making that choice. I think I'm here to support you. So if you're staying at home, so on and so forth. The other thing is, I would bet that a lot of the things that you're talking about in your community, even though it's designed for people in a specific season of life, one of the themes behind this show is those same lessons might apply to other people who have a similar situation in a totally different phase of life because
Absolutely.
they're like, and so you don't have to be necessarily the mom of a toddler to learn from somebody who is doing something while they are parenting a toddler. The bigger situation behind what you're doing is building your business while you have restrictions from somewhere else. And
Mhm.
that is an almost perpetual problem, whether you're working for someone else, whether you're caring for an adult caregiver, whether you're trying to figure out how to be a van lifer on your own. Like, it's like there's always restrictions. So, like, yeah, it's detangling that. So, not that I'm saying that people who are not matching your community should join, but I think the message and the lessons probably could be applied in other places, other wild
100%.
places. Yeah.
Yeah, we just got off a networking call right before we hit record, and most of the women that were in there were moms, but there are some that aren't moms. And one girl got off of mute and said, "Look, I'm not a mom, but the strategies and the systems that we're talking about and the different topics, I'm able to apply in my own business because I'm working around the clock and I'm really looking for ways to be able to simplify my workload and create these systems that work with my life instead of like
Yeah.
keeping me at my desk all the time." So you're 100% correct. I think that when you're working on starting a business, like I'm doing this for moms just because that's my season of life. That's what I
Exactly.
do.
Yes.
But like if someone else relates to me and to like the bigger mission and to the content inside the community, this is an open place for all. I'm never going to be someone that says, "Oh no, you're not a mom, you can't join." No, like come with me, let's hold hands, link arms, and like let's build these businesses together. And that's actually the name of the community. It's called Together because
Okay.
I believe that we win when we truly link arms and that we lift each other up. You're talking about how I had to like asterisk that a little bit earlier about how if you want one life, that's okay. If
Yeah.
you want a life, that's okay. Like I support whatever it is you want to do. I just want to see us win together. Like we're not here to bash each other down. We are here to uplift, support, and cheer each other on.
Right. And the flip side of that coin is that there's tremendous value in finding people who are walking a similar path to yours.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
They are actually the same conversation, and it just has to do with who's in the room. So you did a much better job of making that point than I did. And I want to thank you for that. You do have a special offer for all the audience, which is the Together membership, which the HER in Together is in all caps. So it's very cute. All right. So Together membership, and you have free and monthly options. People can find that at selfstarter.com/together. If you're listening, you don't have to like write it down, and you heard me like fumble it a little bit. If you are a subscriber to the Imperfect Adulting email community, that's the easiest way to get all these links because then I email them directly to your email box. You just click on them. That's always the easiest way. But the link is also in the show notes wherever you are watching or listening to the show. Megan, are you ready for the final rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
I try to ask that these days with a little bit of like drama, even though these are ridiculous, silly questions that have no drama in them. All
Drum
right.
roll.
what what is something that surprised you about motherhood?
Ooh, that surprised me. Um, that I was actually not too bad at like being adaptable and changing all these diapers, I guess. I had never changed a diaper prior to having a child, and the amount of diapers I now do without like basically I could do it with my eyes closed. I didn't realize that I could actually be a diaper expert from someone that like had never changed one prior to becoming a mom.
That is very good. That is very good. Sometimes in the stages, so there are four kids that went through my house, two stepkids and two kids. And sometimes people will say, oh, you always miss the older stages, like you're going to miss all of these things. And I have a joke which is like, you know what nobody misses? Nobody misses the last diaper. Like that is a thing that we are like, thank you, moving on.
Well,
Finished.
and Well, and not only diapers, but that was something that someone told me in motherhood, just in general, is you always remember the firsts, but you never know when it's going to be the last. And I thought that was like something I really took to heart was like,
Yeah.
okay, just make sure that you're really embracing every single day because you remember those first moments, but you never know when it's going to be like the last time that like they give you like a hug on like ask you to go sit and watch TV with them. Who knows what it might be.
Yeah.
But it's just really embracing all of those moments. I really don't take those lightly.
And embracing it, I think, is the key for people who are listening. There's a lot of like armchair quarterbacking advice that comes to parents, and sometimes it can feel like it has a lot of pressure. And for me, it did feel like there was a lot of pressure in like make the most of the moments, you're going to miss them. And now having been through all of these things, I'll say from the other side, I feel like if you're lucky enough to really be able to lean into the things that you want to be a part of, by the time the big phases end, you're like, okay, that's enough of that. Like, I mean, my last kid graduated from high school. It was a running joke in all communities, like who had worse senioritis, him or me. Like we were both finished. It was like, we love you guys. Done. Finished. Get
I
me
can
out of here.
imagine. Yeah, so
It was
so
a
for me,
long
it's ready for
season.
diapers to be gone.
Right. And that one, you're like rooting for it. You're like,
Yes.
is this the last diaper? And then you go through this weird phase where you don't carry very many diapers because you're like really hoping it's over. If you have more than one kid, sometimes you only have the wrong size diaper. It's like, but yeah, when it's done and
Funny.
you look over and you're like, we haven't changed the diaper in 2 weeks, you're like dancing
Yes.
in the streets. All right. So do you as a person have an actual bucket list for your life of things you like want to do and experiences? And if you do, you can say no, you don't have one. But if you do, are you brave enough to share with us one of the things that's on it?
I don't have one physically written down, but pre-baby, and my husband and I were pretty big travelers. We love just going on vacations and seeing the world. So one thing that I do really want to do, and this is on our bucket list as a family, is go to Italy for an entire month at minimum and like rent a car and drive the entire country to be able to really get a sense for like that culture. And so Italy is probably my number one at this point as where I'm really wanting to go and just immerse myself in the culture. Um, Outside of that, I don't really have like I said, a bucket list of things written down, but I'm always up for an adventure. So let's see what we get ourselves into, kind of thing.
That Italy idea sounds spectacular. I love that. I love that. All right. So, this is a family question based on living with other people in your house. What temperature do you guys set the thermostat to at night?
To be honest with you, I never touch the thermostat. My husband does that, and if I touch it, then I'm sure to mess it up. So I'm assuming he's at like 74, but don't quote me on it.
Oh, so this is not a thing in your house. We have thermostat wars in my house. It's like you can hear the people shuffling through the house, like adjusting the thermostat in different areas of the house. It's like it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too hot. And somebody was like, "You guys should put the Wi-Fi, enable smart apps." And we have ancient geriatric thermostats in my house because I'm like, no, because if I upgrade this, the children win because they will be better at managing the app than I am. No matter how good I am, they're going to use it. And I'm like, no,
Too funny.
I am more likely to put like a lock like you used to see in like,
Yep,
classrooms where nobody, can't get in. That's
that's funny.
more likely what I'm about to do. But
Oh
that is
yeah,
so
my
good.
husband's always freezing me out, so people are gonna think I'm crazy, but like I sleep with socks on because I'm freezing at night and like I have my pants on and I'm in Southern California, but the house is always cold. So I'm always in a blanket doing something cold, but no, I don't touch the thermostat. I'm for sure gonna mess it up.
So yeah, no, but it was definitely inspired by the fact that this is often a topic in families, and I thought it would be really funny. All right, very good. Thank you very, very much, Megan, for being a wonderful guest today on the show.
Thank you, Amy. I know this is definitely like an imperfect adulting story, but hopefully it added some value for all of your listeners today.
For sure it did. Thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoy the show. And before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Obviously, subscribe wherever you're listening to the show. Listen to more episodes. That'd be great. Obvi again, please write a review and tell your friends about the show. That truly is a great help for getting the show in front of new people. Okay, but more fun for you yourself, head over to imperfectadulting.com and join the email community. You'll get some free stuff right away, and that way you'll begin to get the emails about the podcast. This includes the links for the special offers from the guests, and it's the only way to get that. Also, if you aren't in the mood to listen, I actually include an article directly in those emails. Whee! Now, if you love this and you crave more time with me, Amy, as a coach, a mentor, or just adultier adult, numero uno, check out The Village. If you have a story you want to share with the listeners, I'd love to hear from you. I have an open application. Just let me know you want it. And that's a wrap for today. Until next time, remember, the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now, I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that may not mean that you're lost. It may just mean that you're on your way. This is Amy Stone, signing off. The Imperfect Adulting podcast is created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy does not intend or hold herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level.